The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. She's a drug dealer, my sister Carmen screamed across our parents' living room, her finger pointed directly at me like a loaded weapon. I saw her meeting with known criminals. She's destroying our family name. The entire family gathering froze. 23 relatives, all staring at me with a mixture of shock, disgust, and betrayal. My mother dropped her coffee cup, the ceramic shattering against the hardwood floor like my heart was shattering inside my chest. My father's face went pale, his hands trembling as he reached for his chair to steady himself. "Carmen, that's not," I started, but she cut me off with another venomous accusation. "Don't you dare lie to us, Rosa," she shrieked, her voice echoing off the walls. "I followed you last week. I saw you in that abandoned warehouse district, talking to those tattooed thugs. You were carrying a briefcase full of God knows what." My uncle Roberto, who had always been like a second father to me, slowly shook his head. "Rosa, how could you do this to your family? We raised you better than this." My cousin Maria, who I'd helped through college just 3 years ago, wouldn't even look at me. "I can't believe I trusted you around my children," she whispered, pulling her twins closer to her chest, as if I was some kind of monster. This was supposed to be our annual family reunion, a celebration of our tight-knit Mexican-American family's success and unity. Instead, it had turned into my public execution, orchestrated by my own sister. Let me back up and explain how we got here, because this story isn't what it seems. My name is Rosa Elena Martinez, and for the past 8 years, I've been living a double life that would make any spy movie look like child's play. To my family, I was just Rosa, the quiet, mysterious daughter who worked some government job that I could never really talk about. They knew I traveled frequently, made decent money, and kept to myself. What they didn't know was that I was a special agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration, working deep undercover in some of the most dangerous drug trafficking operations in the southwestern United States. For 8 years, I had sacrificed normal family relationships, missed countless holidays, and endured lonely nights in seedy motels and safe houses, all while building cases against major drug cartels. I couldn't tell my family the truth because their safety depended on it. The cartels I was infiltrating wouldn't hesitate to target innocent family members if they suspected a federal agent in their midst. My sister Carmen had always been jealous of what she perceived as my easy life. While she struggled as a single mother working 2 retail jobs to make ends meet, she assumed I was coasting through life with some cushy government desk job. She had no idea that I spent my days surrounded by armed dealers, my nights writing detailed reports for ongoing federal investigations, and my weekends preparing for operations that could easily get me killed. The meeting with criminals she'd witnessed was actually the culmination of an 18-month undercover operation targeting the Sinaloa cartel's distribution network in Texas. The briefcase full of God knows what contained hidden recording equipment and marked bills that would help federal prosecutors put away a dozen high-level drug traffickers for decades. But standing in my parents' living room, watching my entire family look at me with disgust and disappointment, I couldn't explain any of that. Not yet. "Rosa, is this true?" my mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes, the same dark brown eyes I'd inherited, were filled with tears. "Are you really involved with drugs?" Before I could answer, Carmen launched into another attack. "Of course it's true, Mama. Look at her. She can't even deny it. She's been lying to us for years, pretending to be this perfect daughter while she's been poisoning our communities." My teenage nephew Alex, Carmen's oldest son, shook his head in disbelief. "Tia Rosa, how could you? You helped me with my anti-drug presentation for school last year. You said drugs were destroying families." The irony was crushing. I had indeed helped Alex with his presentation, and every word I'd told him about drugs destroying families was true. I'd seen it firsthand in my undercover work, families torn apart by addiction, children abandoned by parents who cared more about their next fix than their own flesh and blood. It was exactly why I did this job. "Everyone needs to calm down," my father said, but his voice lacked conviction. Even he seemed to believe Carmen's accusations. "Calm down." Carmen exploded. "Papa, your daughter is a criminal. She's probably been using our family gatherings to plan her drug deals. Remember how she always stepped outside to take those work calls? Those were probably her cartel contacts. Those calls had indeed been work-related, but they were check-ins with my DEA supervisors, not cartel contacts. I was required to report my location and status every few hours when I was off active duty, a safety protocol that had saved my life more than once. My grandmother, the family matriarch who had immigrated from Guadalajara 60 years ago, slowly stood up from her chair. At 87 years old, she commanded respect from everyone in the room. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with disappointment. Rosa, Mija, your grandfather, and I came to this country with nothing but hope for a better life for our children and grandchildren. We worked in the fields, we cleaned houses, we did whatever honest work we could find. We never imagined that one of our own would choose this path. Her words hit harder than any physical blow could have. This was the woman who had taught me Spanish lullabies, who had made me my first communion dress by hand, who had always believed I could accomplish anything I set my mind to. Seeing disappointment in her eyes was unbearable. Abuela, please, I tried to explain, but Carmen wasn't finished with her character assassination. And another thing, she continued, pacing the room like a prosecutor addressing a jury. Have any of you noticed how secretive she's become? How she never brings anyone home to meet the family? That's because she can't. Her friends are all criminals. Actually, I didn't bring anyone home because maintaining an undercover identity meant avoiding personal attachments that could compromise operations or put innocent people in danger. I'd given up dating, close friendships, and normal social activities to protect both my cover and my family's safety. My cousin Miguel, who worked as a police officer in San Antonio, looked at me with professional skepticism. Rosa, if you're innocent, why aren't you defending yourself? Why aren't you explaining what Carmen saw? It was a fair question, and the answer was simple. I legally couldn't explain without potentially compromising an ongoing federal investigation. My hands were tied by oath, duty, and federal law. Because she can't, Carmen answered for me. Because she's guilty as hell, and she knows it. The room erupted in whispers and accusations. I could hear fragments of conversations. I always knew something was wrong. She never seemed right. How could we have been so blind? My phone began buzzing in my pocket. I glanced at the screen and saw it was my supervisor, Agent Director Sarah Chen. This was highly unusual. She never called during my scheduled family time unless it was an emergency. I need to take this call, I said quietly. Oh, perfect. Carmen laughed bitterly. More drug business, right, Rosa? Are you going to plan your next deal right in front of us? I stepped into the kitchen to answer the call, my hands shaking from the stress of the situation. Agent Martinez, I answered in a low voice. Rosa, I need you to listen carefully. Director Chen's voice was urgent. Operation Serpiente just concluded successfully. We arrested 12 high-level targets, seized over $2 million in cash and drugs, and shut down a major distribution pipeline. Your 18 months of undercover work just broke the back of the Sinaloa operation in South Texas. I closed my eyes, feeling a mixture of relief and vindication. 18 months of my life, 18 months of living in constant danger, had finally paid off. More importantly, she continued, your cover is now blown, which means you're no longer bound by operational security protocols. You can finally tell your family the truth about what you do. The truth. After 8 years of careful lies and necessary deceptions, I could finally tell my family the truth. There's more, Director Chen added. The Department of Justice wants to recognize your exceptional service. You're being awarded the Administrator's Award of Honor for your undercover work. The ceremony is next month and your family is invited. I walked back into the living room, where my family was still discussing my apparent criminal activities in hushed, disappointed tones. Carmen was holding court, adding new details to her accusations with each retelling. She's probably been dealing drugs since college, Carmen was saying. It explains how she could afford that nice car and her apartment. No legitimate government job pays that well. Actually, federal agents made decent salaries, and hazard pay for undercover work was even better. But I'd never discussed my finances with family because that would have raised questions I couldn't answer. I think we need to call the police, my Uncle Roberto said sadly. Rosa, we love you, but we can't harbor a criminal." "That won't be necessary," I said quietly, reaching into my jacket pocket. The room fell silent as I pulled out my federal credentials, the same credentials I'd been carrying for 8 years, but could never show them. "My name is Special Agent Rosa Elena Martinez," I said, my voice steady and clear. "For the past 8 years, I have been working undercover for the Drug Enforcement Administration, targeting major drug trafficking organizations throughout the southwestern United States." I held up my DEA badge, the golden shield catching the light from the overhead fixture. The silence in the room was deafening. The criminals Carmen saw me meeting with were targets of an 18-month federal investigation that concluded successfully this morning with the arrest of 12 high-level drug traffickers and the seizure of over $2 million in drugs and cash. Carmen's face went white. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no words came out. The briefcase she saw me carrying contained federal recording equipment and marked bills used to gather evidence for federal prosecution. Every work call I took was a required check-in with my supervisors to ensure my safety while working undercover. I looked directly at Carmen, whose accusatory expression had transformed into one of absolute horror. "For 8 years, I have risked my life infiltrating the very drug organizations that are destroying our communities. I have missed family holidays, birthdays, and important moments because my cover identity required complete commitment. I couldn't tell any of you the truth because your safety depended on it." My mother began crying, not tears of disappointment this time, but tears of pride and relief. "Every day for 8 years, I went to work knowing I might not come home. I've been threatened, I've been shot at, and I've watched good people die because of the criminals I was trying to catch. And through it all, the hardest part wasn't the danger. It was not being able to share the truth with the people I love most." My father stood up and walked toward me, his eyes fixed on the badge in my hands. "Mija, you're really a federal agent?" "Yes, Papa. I'm really a federal agent." He pulled me into a fierce hug, and I could feel his body shaking with emotion. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. "And I'm so sorry we doubted you." One by one, my family members approached me with apologies, hugs, and questions. My grandmother took my face in her weathered hands and smiled through her tears. "You are exactly what your grandfather and I dreamed our family could become," she said in Spanish. "A protector of the innocent." But Carmen remained frozen in her chair, the reality of her public accusations sinking in. She had just spent 30 minutes destroying my reputation and calling me a criminal in front of our entire extended family. "Carmen," I said, walking over to her chair, "I understand why you were suspicious. My work required me to maintain strict operational security, which meant I couldn't explain my activities to anyone, including family." She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. "Rosa, I thought I was trying to protect the family. I thought you were really involved with drugs." "I know you were trying to protect the family," I said gently. "But next time, maybe ask me directly before making public accusations." My cousin Miguel, the police officer, stepped forward with professional curiosity. "Rosa, can you tell us about any of your cases? What kind of work do you actually do?" "I can share some general information now that my cover is blown," I replied. "I've worked undercover in operations targeting heroin trafficking, methamphetamine distribution, and cocaine smuggling. The operation that just concluded was focused on a major cartel cell that was responsible for distributing drugs throughout South Texas." My nephew Alex, who had been so disappointed earlier, now looked at me with something approaching awe. "Tia Rosa, you're like a real-life superhero." I laughed for the first time all day. "Not a superhero, Mijo. Just someone who believes that families like ours deserve to be safe from the people who profit from addiction and violence." The rest of the evening transformed from a disaster into a celebration. My family peppered me with questions about my work, my training, and my experiences. I shared what I could while respecting ongoing investigations and classified information. My mother insisted on cooking my favorite meal, pozole with all the traditional accompaniments, while my father called my uncles who lived out of state to share the news. "Our Rosa is a federal agent," he kept saying proudly into the phone. Carmen approached me later in the evening as I was helping with dishes in the kitchen. "Rosa, I owe you more than just an apology," she said quietly. I was jealous of what I thought was your easy life, and I let that jealousy turn into suspicion and accusation. I had no idea you were risking your life to protect people like us. Carmen, I understand, I started, but she held up her hand. No, let me finish. I spent years resenting you because I thought you had it easy while I was struggling. I thought you were getting special treatment, getting ahead without working hard. I had no idea you were working the most dangerous job imaginable. She wiped tears from her eyes. I'm not just sorry for tonight. I'm sorry for years of jealousy and resentment. You deserve so much better from your sister. I set down the dish towel and gave her a hug. We're family, Carmen. That means we forgive each other and move forward together. 3 weeks later, I stood on a stage at the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., receiving the Administrator's Award of Honor for exceptional service in undercover operations. In the audience sat my parents, my grandmother, Carmen, and a dozen other family members, all beaming with pride. During my acceptance speech, I looked out at my family and said, "This award doesn't belong to me alone. It belongs to every family member who supported me without knowing why I couldn't always be there, who loved me without understanding why I had to keep secrets, and who forgave me when those secrets finally came to light." After the ceremony, as we walked through the halls of the Department of Justice, my grandmother took my arm and spoke in Spanish. "Mija, your grandfather would have been so proud to see his granddaughter protecting families just like ours." Carmen, who had spent the entire trip apologizing and trying to make amends, finally seemed to accept my forgiveness. "I promise I'll never doubt you again," she said as we waited for our flight home. "Just promise me you'll ask questions before making accusations," I replied with a smile. The flight home was filled with laughter, stories, and planning for future family gatherings where I would finally be able to be completely honest about my work and my life. Looking back on that terrible day when Carmen accused me of being a drug dealer, I realized it was actually a gift in disguise. It forced the truth into the open and allowed my family to finally understand the sacrifices I'd been making for years. It brought us closer together and eliminated the secrets that had been creating distance between us. Most importantly, it reminded me why I chose this difficult, dangerous career in the first place, to protect families like mine from the people who would destroy them for profit. Today, I work in a different capacity within the DEA, training new undercover agents and coordinating operations from headquarters. I no longer live a double life, and my family now understands why I sometimes can't discuss my work in detail. Carmen and I have rebuilt our relationship stronger than ever. She often tells people about her sister, the federal agent, and I've helped her understand the real impact that drug trafficking has on communities like ours. The lesson I learned from that horrible family gathering is this: truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how well you think you've hidden it. Secrets might be necessary for safety or security, but they come with a cost. When the time comes to reveal the truth, it's worth the temporary pain to achieve lasting understanding. And sometimes, the people who accuse you of being what you're fighting against are the ones who need to learn the most about who you really are.